Welcome back. South African political parties have shown respect for the Constitution and for the rule of law. That's the view of Jendayi Frazer, an adjunct senior fellow for African Studies. This is at the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations, a former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs and a former U.S. ambassador to South Africa. And while she's skeptical about Umkhonto we Sizwe Party's claims that the election was rigged, she offered praise for following the legal processes through which to ventilate disputes. As Sherwin Bryce-Pease reports, Frazer has also weighed in on what the international business community would be looking at as South Africa's political landscape shifts.
How can South Africa-U.S. relations improve?
Frazer's been a keen observer and analyst of political developments in South Africa, seen here in conversation with International Relations Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor at the Council on Foreign Relations in Washington in 2022.
Well, I think, once again, South Africa has acquitted itself well in terms of running a good election that all of the observers said was free and fair, including an ANC essentially loss of a lot of its power, which means that some of its popularity has declined over a number of years. But yet, the maturity of the political system to be able to accept that loss, and of the ANC party to be able to accept that loss, and then to move towards coalition government or government of national unity within the time frame that the Constitution sets out. And so I think that shows there was, a lot of expectations that there could be violence, there could be chaos. And I think the South Africans showed themselves to be a people, a country, and parties that are, in fact, respect their constitution and are following the rule of law for their political system.
A deal that has seen some black nationalist parties, including the Economic Freedom Fighters and the MK Party, among other smaller formations, reject the grand coalition that will see the ANC under President Ramaphosa lead a government of national unity that those parties view as counter-revolutionary.
The principles underneath the Democratic Alliance and that government of national unity and the ANC are the same, which is respect for the rule of law, respect for constitutionalism, even respect for market economy and liberal economic policies. The policies are different. The ANC has been calling for economic empowerment. It's been calling for social safety nets. It's been calling for more welfare provisions to the majority of the population, the Black people, the African people, the majority of the population. But the DA has been against those policies. But you can always negotiate on the policy front if your principles are the same. And so I think that South Africa is just going through the politics that every other country goes through. There are different factions, there are different ideologies.
We pressed Frazer on the Zuma factor, his party's broad dispute of the election results, and how this might play internationally.
This is the politics of grievance. Until MK puts out a real platform for what they think should be different in the economy or the politics or the international affairs, it doesn't look like it's anything other than, he got kicked out in 2018 and now he's, there was factionalism within the ANC at that time. So certainly there's something there, but it just looks to me like it's politics of grievance. And particularly, he's using the proper means to contest, right? Which is to go to the courts. I respect that and I applaud that. But if the courts don't satisfy, then the question is, do you call people to the streets, for violence? If it's peaceful demonstration, that's one thing. But losers often claim that, it was rigged. The United States is going through this right now. That's where there's so much uncertainty and tension in our society, because whomever wins, the expectation is that there could be violence, which really has never been the tradition of post-elections in the United States, except for now after January 6th. When the MAGA supporters of President Trump, former President Trump, attacked our Capitol.
Frazer is also president and CEO of 50 Ventures, a strategic consultancy company focused on market strategy and access in Africa.
Are you that worried?
As she weighed in on how the US business community might view the political dynamics in South Africa.
They're going to look for consistency, right? The rule of law is the most important thing, and consistency of policy is very, very important. I do believe that some international businesses have been burdened by the requirements of Black economic empowerment programs. And so I think that they will be looking to see whether this government of national unity will make any change in some of those policies and some of those programs. Not the fundamental principle of inclusiveness, but the requirements on business. I think probably would be an area that, the Chamber of Commerce and others might look into to see how the government changes. I also think that there is a sense to which there will be some relief, especially amongst American companies. There are over 600 American companies there, because the feeling is that, again, the government of national unity that's not part of the EFF, right, with the progressive forces, is not going to appropriate property, right? It's going to actually accept a liberal economy with rules of law, whereas the EFF and their policies are about appropriation. And so I think that will also create some sense of relief for international companies and business and the prospects of continued investment in South Africa.
On Saturday, US President Joe Biden congratulated President Ramaphosa on his re-election and commended all parties for working together to form a government of national unity. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.